The alarm screamed through the council chamber. Every ambassador froze as the massive holographic display flickered to life above their heads. A red dot pulsed in the center of the forbidden zone, the place no ship had entered for 10,000 years. "Impossible," whispered the Torvan Chancellor. His three eyes widened in disbelief. "Confirmed," said the system operator, her voice shaking. "One vessel. Human signature. Currently holding position in the Necros void." The chamber erupted. Voices shouted in a dozen different languages. Some ambassadors called for immediate military action. Others demanded explanations. The humans had broken the oldest law in the galaxy, Captain. Kang Tae stood on the bridge of the UHSN, indomitable, and watched the stars. His ship was enormous, bigger than anything humanity had built before. The walls hummed with power. Screens showed data flowing faster than any human I could follow. Outside, space itself seemed darker here, as if light struggled to exist in this cursed region. "Captain, we're detecting movement," said Commander Yuna from her station. "Multiple ships. Lots of them." Tae nodded slowly. He had expected this. "How many?" 47 battle groups, sir. "All converging on our position." The bridge crew remained silent. Everyone knew what this meant. Nearly every military force in the galaxy was coming for them. Yuna looked at her captain, worried clear in her eyes. "Sir, maybe we should reconsider. We could withdraw and explain our reasons." Tae shook his head. "3 of our colonies went dark. 50 million people, Commander. Children, families, all of them just ... gone. The last transmission came from this sector. We're not leaving until we know what happened to them." On the view screen, space began to fill with ships. They came in all shapes and sizes. Some looked like living creatures made of metal. Others were geometric shapes that hurt to look at too long. They formed a loose circle around the human vessel, weapons charging. Ready to fire, Ambassador Han sat in his small quarters. Aboard a diplomatic vessel rushing toward the void. Sweat covered his forehead. His hands shook as he tried to compose a message to the council. How could he explain this? Humanity had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were still the newcomers, still not fully trusted. The other species feared humans. They feared how fast humanity learned. They feared human weapons that could pierce any shield. They feared human ships that moved faster than physics should allow. Most of all, they feared how humans never gave up, never surrendered, never accepted defeat. Now humanity had done the unthinkable. They had entered the Necros void. The communication screen in front of Captain Tae flickered. A massive alien face appeared, reptilian and ancient. "High Chancellor Vexith of the Torvan Ascendancy?" His voice boomed through the bridge speakers. "Human vessel, you have violated sacred space. The Necros void has been forbidden since the fall of the progenitors. Withdraw immediately, or you will be destroyed." Tae stepped forward, his face calm. "Chancellor, we mean no disrespect to galactic law, but we have reason to believe our missing colonies are connected to this region. We detected signals originating from within the void." "Yeah, that is impossible. Nothing exists in the void except ruins and death." "Then we will confirm that and leave. But not until we find our people." The Chancellor's face darkened. "You have 6 hours to withdraw. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war. We will not allow humans to claim progenitor technology. The last species that tried nearly destroyed the galaxy." The screen went black. Commander Yuna turned to her captain. "Sir, they're serious? Every ship out there is powered up. If we stay, they'll attack." "Let them," Tae said quietly. "I didn't bring us here to start a war, but I won't abandon our people either." Lieutenant Sora worked frantically at her science station. Her fingers flew across the controls, sorting through terabytes of data. Something bothered her about the signals they had detected. They weren't random. They had a pattern. "Captain," she called out, "I've found something. Those signals we picked up? They match frequencies used by our colony ships. But there's something else mixed in. Something old." "Really old? Show me." The main screen changed. Waveforms appeared, overlapping and intertwining. Parts of the signal were clearly human in origin. But underneath, something else pulsed, something that made the patterns seem almost alive. I'm running it through the progenitor database now, Sora continued. The parts we've been able to decode anyway. This might take a few minutes. Tay watched the data flow. 6 hours? That's all they had. 6 hours to find answers, or start a war with the entire galaxy. The weight of it pressed down on him. Every person on his ship trusted him. Every family of those missing colonists trusted him. He couldn't fail them. Movement detected, announced the tactical officer. 3 vessels breaking formation. There. They're heading into the void. Following us. Identify them. Draven scout ships. Fast, armed, but not matching our firepower. Yuna leaned closer to Tay. They want to see what we're up to. Can't let us have all the glory if we find something valuable, or they want to make sure we're not planning anything hostile, Tay replied. The minutes ticked by. The bridge crew worked in focused silence. More alien ships edged closer to the void's boundary, but didn't cross. They waited, weapons ready, watching the humans who had dared to break 10,000 years of law. Then Sora gasped. Captain! The database found a match. These signals, they're not from our colonies. I mean, yes, our ships are transmitting them, but they're being forced to. Something is using our technology to broadcast. And according to the progenitor records, this signal pattern has a name. What is it? Sora's face went pale. They called it the Harvester Song. It was the last thing the progenitors ever recorded before they died. 4 hours remained on the countdown. Captain Tay stood before the main view screen, arms crossed, staring at the data Lieutenant Sora had discovered. The Harvester Song. The name alone sent chills through the bridge crew. Tell me everything, Tay said. So R.A. pulled up ancient files, images that flickered and glitched from age. The progenitors were the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever seen. They built megastructures around stars. They shaped planets like clay. But something destroyed them. The records are fragmented, but they mention machines. Living machines that consumed organic matter. Harvesters, Commander Yuna said quietly. Yes, the progenitors called them that. According to these files, the harvesters didn't just kill. They processed living beings, converted them into raw computational power. The progenitors fought them for centuries and lost. The last archive entry is this signal. This song, it was playing when their civilization fell. Tay felt ice in his stomach, and our colony ships are broadcasting it. Not by choice, sir. I managed to decrypt some data from the last colony vessel that went dark. There's video footage. It's corrupted, but I can show you what remains. The screen changed. Static filled the image, but shapes moved within it. A colony settlement. Buildings made of prefabricated materials gleaming under an alien sun. Then the sky darkened. Massive shadows fell across the settlement. The camera shook. People were screaming, running. Something descended from above, too large to fit on the screen. Mechanical arms reaching down like a spider. The footage cut to black. That's all we have, Sora whispered. How old is that recording? That's the strange part, Captain. The timestamp says it's from 3 months ago, from the last colony to go silent. But the video compression, the data structure, it's ancient. Thousands of years old? It's like someone took an old recording and overlaid it on new data. Or, Yuna said slowly, whatever attacked our colonies is the same thing that attacked the progenitors. The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. They weren't investigating a mystery. They were facing extinction. Captain, called the tactical officer. The Indomitable is picking up a massive structure ahead. Deep in the void, it's big, sir. Really big. The view screen shifted to show a long-range scan. At first, it looked like a small moon. But as the image sharpened, details emerged. It wasn't a moon. It was a station, a construct of metal and something else. Something that seemed to shift and move even in the static image. It orbited a dying red star, pulling power from the star's fading light. That's a harvester station, Sora breathed. It has to be. The design matches fragments from the progenitor database. How many of these stations were there? The records don't say. But if even one survived... Suddenly, alarms screamed through the ship. "Contact!" shouted the tactical officer. "Multiple contacts?" Coming from the station. The view screen exploded with movement. Dozens of objects launched from the massive structure, moving impossibly fast. They weren't ships in any traditional sense. They were drones, each one about the size of a fighter craft, but their hulls seemed to ripple and change as they moved. "All ships. This is Captain Tay." He broadcast on every frequency. "We have hostiles inbound. I say again, hostiles inbound. These are not human vessels. Unknown origin. Recommend defensive positions." The alien fleet that had surrounded them suddenly had a new problem. The harvester drones didn't distinguish between human and alien. They attacked everything with equal fury. Lieutenant Haon took control of the weapons station. Targeting solutions locked, firing. The Indomitable's railguns opened fire. Solid projectiles, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, screamed through space. They hit the first wave of drones, and metal exploded. But the drones adapted. The second wave phased their hulls, and the projectiles passed right through them without damage. "They're learning," Haon said, his voice tight with stress. "Adapting to our weapons in real time." Outside, the alien fleet fared worse. Energy weapons that could melt through starship hulls simply bounced off the drone shields. Missiles detonated harmlessly meters away from their targets. A Torvan battleship took a direct hit from 3 drones. They latched onto the hull and began drilling through. In seconds, the ship's power went dead. "Switch to kinetic pulse weapons," Tay ordered. "Rapid fire, multiple vectors. Don't give them time to adapt." The Indomitable's secondary weapons systems came online. Smaller guns, firing thousands of rounds per minute, created a wall of metal around the ship. Some drones got through. Most were shredded by the constant barrage. Tay opened a communication channel to all nearby vessels. "All ships, this is Captain Kong Tay of the human vessel Indomitable. We're transmitting tactical data now. These machines adapt to single attack patterns. Use multiple weapon types. Keep changing your approach. And for God's sake, form up. If we fight alone, we die alone." For a moment, nothing happened. Then a Draven warship moved closer to the Indomitable, taking up a defensive position. Another followed, then another. The alien ships that had come to destroy the human vessel now fought beside it. Commander Eunice stared at her screens in disbelief. "They're actually listening to us, 'cause they're not stupid," Tay replied. "They know a common enemy when they see one." The battle raged for 20 minutes. Drones fell by the dozens, but more kept coming. The harvester station seemed to have an endless supply. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the attack stopped. The remaining drones retreated back to the station. "Damage report," Tay ordered. "Minor hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. Shields at 60%. Weapons systems operational. What about the fleet?" "We lost 3 alien vessels. 2 Draven scouts and a Torvan frigate. Several others badly damaged." Tay watched the harvester station on the main screen. It sat there, silent now, watching them. Waiting, Sora called out from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting something else. The station is scanning us. All of us. It's analyzing our ships, our weapons, everything. Can you block it?" "I'm trying, but it's using frequencies I've never seen before. It's not just scanning our technology. It's scanning for organic signatures. It's counting us, cataloging us. Why would it do that?" Lieutenant Haon pulled up new data on his screen. His face went white. "Captain, I found something. Deep scans of the station interior. There are chambers inside. Thousands of them. And they're occupied." The image appeared on the main view screen. Inside the massive station, chamber after chamber filled the structure, like cells in a honeycomb. And in each chamber, suspended in some kind of liquid, were bodies. Human bodies. The colony's Una whispered. "They're in there. All of them." Tay's jaw clenched. 50 million people. his people. Trapped inside a machine built by an ancient enemy, alive but imprisoned, their minds being used for purposes he couldn't imagine. "Get me Ambassador Han," he said quietly. "And get me whoever's in charge of that alien fleet. We're not leaving here without our people. And something tells me we're going to need all the help we can get." War Marshal Cathar of the Draven Swarms appeared on the communication screen. Her insect-like features were difficult for humans to read, but her voice carried respect. "Human Captain, your tactical data saved many ships. We are in your debt." "We're all in trouble together, Marshal," Tay replied. "That station has my people inside it, but it's also a threat to everyone in this region of space. We need to work together." Agreed. "The High Chancellor will not like this, but he is not here. We are... What do you propose?" "A meeting. Face to face. We need to plan an assault on that station before it wakes up completely. You believe it is dormant? If it was fully active, we'd already be dead." Terra's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Fair point. Very well. I will bring my command staff to your vessel. But know this, human. If you betray us, my ships will turn your vessel into dust." "I wouldn't expect anything less, Marshal." 2 hours later, the briefing room of the Indomitable filled with beings from across the galaxy. War Marshal Cathara towered over everyone, her 4 arms folded across her chest. Beside her stood a Torvan general with pale blue skin. A Valori ambassador floated in a containment suit filled with methane gas. Ambassador Han looked exhausted as he tried to facilitate communication between species who had been enemies for decades. Captain Tay stood at the head of the table. Behind him, Lieutenant Sora displayed the data they had gathered on the massive screens. "This is what we know," Tay began. "The Harvester Station has been dormant for thousands of years. Something woke it up. We believe it was our colonies passing through this sector. The station captured them, processed them, and is now using their neural patterns as computational power." "To what end?" asked the Torvan general. "To fully wake up," Sora answered. "The station is enormous, but most of it is still offline. It needs organic minds to power its systems. Right now, it has 50 million human minds. That's enough to run basic functions. But if it captures more ships, more people, it will reach full operational capacity, and then," Cathara asked, "then it sends out a signal. A wake-up call to other Harvester stations scattered across the galaxy. We found references in the progenitor database. There are hundreds of these stations, maybe thousands, all dormant, all waiting." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. One station nearly killed them all. Hundreds of stations would end civilization as they knew it. The Valori ambassador spoke. Their voice synthesized through the suit. "You speak of assault. How does one assault something so massive?" Tay pulled up a new image. "There's a central core in this station, a power matrix that feeds energy to all systems. It's heavily shielded, but if we can plant explosives there, we can overload it. The resulting explosion would destroy the station. Everyone inside it," said the Torvan general quietly. "His coaches, my people are already as good as dead if we do nothing," Tay said, his voice hard. "But there's a chance we can extract them first. Small teams go in, while the fleet provides cover fire. We get the colonists out, blow the core, and get clear before the whole thing goes up." "The survival rate of such a mission would be minimal," Kethera observed. "I know. That's why I'm asking for volunteers, not demanding anyone come with us." Engineer Minho spoke up from his position near the door. "Captain, our damage from the first attack is worse than reported. Our faster-than-light drives took heavy damage. Even if we survive the assault, we might not be able to leave this system." Tay looked at his crew. Commander Yuna met his eyes without flinching. Lieutenant Han nodded slightly. Officer Nari, his tactical expert, stood straighter. They all knew what this meant. The Indomitable might become a tomb as well as a weapon. "Then we make it count," Tay said simply. Medical Officer Gina had set up a small clinic on one of the lower decks. Wounded aliens lay on makeshift beds beside injured humans. She moved between them, treating burns, setting broken bones, administering pain medication. A young Draven soldier clicked nervously as she approached. "Easy," Gina said softly. "I'm just going to check your wounds." The soldier relaxed slightly as she worked. "You are skilled. Not many humans would help us. You're hurt. That's all that matters." An older Draven officer watched from across the room. Later, she would tell others about the human doctor who treated enemies with the same care as her own people. It was a small thing, but small things mattered in war. Lieutenant Sora continued analyzing the station's structure. The more she learned, the more horrified she became. The chambers holding the colonists weren't just storage. They were processing units. The harvester station was slowly converting human neural patterns into pure data, stripping away personality, memory, emotion. What remained was computational power, but the people themselves would be gone. And there, in chamber 7043, she found a familiar signature. Her sister Ari. She had been part of the first colony that went silent. Sora had thought her dead. Now she knew Ari was trapped in that nightmare. Her mind being slowly erased, Sora's hand shook as she saved the location data. She would tell the captain. They would get Ari out. They had to. Back in the briefing room, the planning continued. Officer Nari outlined the assault plan. Multiple boarding teams hitting different entry points. Move fast, stay coordinated. Extract the colonists chamber by chamber. It would take precision and luck in equal measure. "How long do we have?" asked Cathera. "Station is sending out pulses," Sora explained. "We think it's testing its signal range. In 12 hours, maybe less, it will try to transmit the wake-up call. Once that happens, every harvester station in the galaxy starts powering up. We have to stop it before then." 12 hours, the Torvin general repeated. To plan, execute an assault, rescue millions of people, and destroy a station the size of a moon. Impossible. Difficult. Tay corrected. Not impossible. Humans have a saying. When faced with impossible odds, we don't calculate the probability of success. We just do what needs to be done. Kethera's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. "I begin to understand why the Council fears your species." "Very well, Captain Tay. My warriors will join your assault. We will show these machines what happens when they threaten living beings." Other commanders agreed. The Torvin general volunteered his shock troops. The Valori pledged their heavy weapons. Even species who had never fought alongside each other prepared to enter hell together as the meeting ended. Ambassador Han pulled Tay aside. "You know, this is suicide, right? Even if the assault succeeds, the chances of getting everyone out alive are almost zero." "I know, and you're going through with it anyway." "Han, those people in that station are counting on us. They can't fight for themselves, so we fight for them. That's what it means to be human. We don't abandon our own." Han nodded slowly. "Then I'll make sure the Council knows what happened here today. If you die, at least the galaxy will know why. They'll know humans don't just talk about honor and duty. You live it." The assault teams began preparing. Weapons were checked and rechecked. Armor was sealed. Medical supplies were distributed. Everyone knew many of them wouldn't come back. But no one backed down. Humans, Draven, Torvin, Valori, all of them stood ready to face the darkness together. On the bridge, Captain Tay looked at the harvester station one last time before the assault began. Somewhere inside that mechanical nightmare, 50 million people waited for rescue they didn't even know was coming. "All teams, this is Captain Tay. We move in 6 hours. Check your gear. Say your prayers if you have them. And remember, today, we're not just fighting for humanity. We're fighting for every living being in this galaxy. Let's show these machines what life is worth." The assault began with a roar of engines and weapons fire. The Indomitable led the charge, its damaged hull groaning under the stress. Around it, the Allied fleet opened fire on the harvester station, targeting weapon platforms and defensive systems. The station responded immediately, launching swarms of drones that filled space like angry insects. Captain Tay stood on his bridge, watching the chaos unfold. "Hey Jan, keep those drones off the boarding craft. I don't care if you have to put the ship between them and the shuttles." "Yes, sir." The Indomitable's railguns fired continuously, creating walls of projectiles that shredded through drone formations. When that wasn't enough, Lieutenant Hyun brought the massive ship about. Using its bulk as a shield for the smaller craft racing toward the station, Officer Nari commanded the lead boarding team. Her shuttle screamed to war at the station's hull, dodging debris and weapons fire. Inside the cramped passenger compartment, 20 humans and 30 aliens checked their equipment one last time. A Draven warrior beside her clicked nervously. "First time?" Nari asked. "First time fighting beside humans. I have heard stories. Don't believe everything you hear. We die just as easily as anyone else."
Oh.
The shuttle hit the station's hull hard. Plasma cutters activated immediately, burning through metal that was thousands of years old, but still incredibly strong. The hull resisted for nearly a minute before the cutters broke through. Atmosphere rushed out of the breach, and the boarding team pushed forward into darkness. The interior of the station was wrong. That was the first thing everyone noticed. The walls weren't just metal. They were partly organic, pulsing with something that looked like veins. The floor felt soft in places, almost like walking on skin. Overhead, conduits dripped with liquid that nobody wanted to identify. "Stay tight," Nari ordered. "Weapons up. Watch your sectors." They moved through corridors that seemed designed to confuse. Passages twisted at impossible angles. Rooms opened into other rooms without doors. The station's interior was a maze built by something that didn't think like any living species. Behind them, more boarding teams breached other sections of the station. Each team had the same mission: find the colonist chambers, extract as many people as possible, plant explosives on the way to the core, get out before everything exploded. It sounded simple. It wasn't. The first contact came 5 minutes into the breach. A harvester construct. Roughly humanoid, but built from dozens of different mechanical and organic parts, emerged from a side passage. It moved with disturbing speed, its limbs extending and contracting like pistons. Nari fired first. Her rifle sent rounds into the construct's center mass. It staggered but didn't fall. The Draven warrior beside her opened fire with a plasma weapon. Combined, they finally brought the construct down. It twitched once, twice, then went still. "Keep moving," Nari ordered. But more constructs appeared. Some crawled on walls. Others dropped from the ceiling. The boarding team fought their way forward, leaving destroyed machines in their wake. On the Indomitable, Engineer Minho worked frantically to keep critical systems online. The damage from earlier battles had been worse than anyone admitted. Power conduits were fried. Life support was operating at 60%, and the faster-than-light drive was completely dead. "Captain, we've got a problem," Minho called over the communication system. "The reactor is overheating. All the weapons fire is generating more heat than we can vent. If we keep this up, we'll have a meltdown in 2 hours." "How long do we need to cover the boarding teams?" "At least 3 hours, probably 4. Then we have a problem." "I'm on it, sir. I'll reroute cooling from non-essential systems. We'll hold together somehow." Inside the station, Officer Nara's team reached the first colonist chamber. The doors were sealed, but the plasma cutters made short work of them. Inside, rows upon rows of pods filled the room, each one containing a human body suspended in glowing fluid. "Medical team, get in here," Nari shouted. The field medics rushed forward, examining the pods. They're alive, one medic reported, but they're connected to the station's systems. We can't just pull them out. The neural feedback would kill them. How long to safely disconnect them? Each person takes about 2 minutes. There are 300 pods in this room alone. Nari did the math. 10 hours. They didn't have 10 hours. They barely had 3. Do what you can, she ordered. Disconnect as many as possible. The rest. She couldn't finish the sentence. Lieutenant Sora guided another team through the station's layout using remote scans. She had memorized the path to chamber 7043. Her sister was there. Ari was there. Nothing would stop Sora from reaching her. But the station fought back. Defensive systems activated throughout the structure. Blast doors slammed shut, sealing off passages. Security constructs poured out of hidden compartments. The station knew it was being invaded, and it was responding with mechanical fury. Captain Tay watched the tactical displays with growing concern. Half the boarding teams were pinned down. The other half was behind schedule. And the station's power readings were climbing. It was waking up faster than predicted. Commander Yuna, how long until the station reaches full power? 45 minutes. Maybe less. And the colonists. We've extracted maybe 10,000 so far. That leaves 49,990,000 still inside. The numbers were crushing. Even if every team worked perfectly, they couldn't save everyone. Tay had known this from the start, but knowing didn't make it easier. Captain called Lieutenant Hayon. The station is charging something big. I'm reading massive power buildup near the core, the transmission array, Sora said from her station. It's preparing to send the wake-up signal. If we don't stop it now, every harvester station in the galaxy goes active. Tay made the hardest decision of his life. All boarding teams, this is Captain Tay. Change of mission. Forget extraction. Get to the core and plant those explosives. We're out of time. Officer Nari heard the order and felt her heart sink. 300 people were in this chamber. Her team had disconnected maybe 30. The rest would die when the station exploded. You heard the captain, she said quietly. Leave the medical team to keep working. Combat personnel, we're moving to the core. The Draven warrior looked at her. We are abandoning them. We're saving the galaxy. Sometimes that's all we can do. Deep in the station, Lieutenant Sora's team finally reached chamber 7043. The door opened, and there in the center pod was Ari. Sora's sister looked peaceful, floating in the glowing fluid, but her eyes were open. Not awake, not asleep, but something in between. Get her out, Sora ordered. I don't care if it's dangerous. Get her out now. The medics worked quickly, disconnecting neural cables, draining the fluid. Ari gasped as she was pulled from the pod, her eyes focusing slowly. She looked at Sora and smiled weakly. Hey sis, took you long enough. Can you walk? Don't think so. Everything's numb. What's happening? Long story. We need to move. Can you tell us anything about this station? Ari's expression changed. Horror filled her eyes. They're not just harvesting us. They're preparing us for something else. Something that lives in spaces between spaces. The harvesters are just workers. The real masters are coming. What masters? I don't know. I saw them in the data streams. Things that make the harvesters look like toys. This station, all the stations, they're building doorways, letting them in. Officer Neri's team fought their way to the core chamber. Bodies littered the corridor behind them, both human and alien. The constructs defending this area were stronger, faster, more dangerous. But the team pushed forward, driven by desperation and duty. The core chamber was enormous. A pulsing sphere of energy filled the center, feeding power to the entire station. Around it, thousands of cables connected to processing units. This was where the harvested minds were used, their neural patterns converted into computational energy. Plant the charges, Nari ordered. Set them for remote detonation. We need to get clear first. But as they worked, the chamber shook. Something was emerging from the core itself. Something huge. On the bridge of the Indomitable, alarms screamed. Captain, the station's transmission array just went active. It's sending the signal. All teams, abort. Get out now. Hyun, target that array. Everything we have. Fire. The Indomitable's weapons unleashed hell. Every railgun, every missile launcher, every energy weapon fired at the transmission array rising from the Harvester Station's surface. The array was massive, a tower of metal and crystalline structures reaching into space like a skeletal finger pointing at the stars. Lieutenant Hyun targeted weak points. Structural supports, power conduits. The bombardment was devastating. Pieces of the array exploded and broke away, but it wasn't enough. The tower continued transmitting, sending its wake-up call across the galaxy. It's not working. Hyun shouted over the noise of weapons fire. Captain T knew what had to be done. All boarding teams, evacuate now. Everyone out. Minho, how much power do we have left in the reactor? Sir, we're already running critical. Any more and we'll melt down? It's exactly what I'm counting on. Yuna, plot a collision course with that transmission array. Commander Yuna turned to stare at her captain. Sir, you heard me. We're going to ram it. The Indomitable might be falling apart, but she's still got enough mass to take that array down. Plot the course. Captain, there are still people on that station. Our teams, the medical staff, the colonists they've extracted. I know, Tay said quietly. But if we don't stop that signal, billions die. Maybe trillions. We don't have a choice. Officer Nari heard the order through her communication link. She looked at her team, exhausted and bloodied from fighting through the station. You heard the captain. Everyone back to the shuttles. Move! They ran. Through corridors filled with constructs, past chambers full of colonists they couldn't save. Away from the core they had just rigged with explosives. Behind them, more teams evacuated, dragging wounded and the few rescued colonists with them. Lieutenant Sora carried her sister Ari, moving as fast as she could. Ari was barely conscious, mumbling about things that didn't make sense. About doorways and shadows and beings made of mathematics. The station had done something to her mind. Shown her things humans weren't meant to see. Stay with me. Ari, we're almost out. Medical Officer Gina coordinated the evacuation from a commandeered shuttle. As teams emerged from the station, she triaged the wounded, deciding who could wait and who needed immediate treatment. Her hands were covered in blood, human and alien both, but she didn't stop working. How many more are inside? She asked an officer. At least 100? And 40 million colonists still in their chambers. The number hit Gina like a physical blow. 40 million people. Most of them would die when the station exploded. There was nothing anyone could do. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Engineer Minho worked one last miracle. He rerouted all remaining power to the engines, stripping life support, artificial gravity, everything except propulsion. The ship groaned and shuddered as systems failed, but the engines burned brighter than ever. Course plotted, Commander Yuna reported, her voice tight with emotion. Collision in 4 minutes. All personnel, this is Captain Tay. Evacuate the ship. All non-essential crew to the escape pods. That's an order. The bridge crew didn't move. Yuna shook her head. We're not leaving you, sir, Commander. That wasn't a request. With respect, sir, you can't fly this ship alone. You need navigation, weapons, engineering. You need us. Lieutenant Hyun spoke without turning from his station. Captain, we all volunteered for this mission. We knew the risks. We're seeing it through. Engineer Minho's voice came over the communication system. I'm staying too, Captain. Someone needs to keep the reactor stable long enough to reach the target. Might as well be me. Officer Neri's voice joined in. Sir, my team made it to a shuttle, but the station's closing blast doors. We're trapped. We're going to stay here and make sure every colonist chamber we can reach gets opened. If they're going to die, at least they'll die free, not trapped in those nightmares. Tay felt his throat tighten. These people, his crew, were choosing to die. Not because they had to, but because it was right, because it mattered. Very well, he said softly. It's been an honor serving with all of you. The Indomitable accelerated toward the transmission array. Outside, the Allied fleet provided cover fire, keeping the station's defenses focused on them instead of the dying human vessel. War Marshal Cathara watched the human ship make its final run and ordered her vessels to fire everything they had. For the humans, she said. For all of us. Inside the station, Officer Nari and her team worked frantically. They moved from chamber to chamber, using their plasma cutters to open pods. Most of the colonists were too deep in the neural connection to survive disconnection. But some came out alive. Confused, terrified, but alive. What's happening? One colonist asked a young man barely 20 years old. We're getting you out, Nari told him. Can you walk? I think so. Then follow the lights. They'll lead you to the shuttles. Run, and don't look back. The young man stumbled away. Nari moved to the next chamber, the next pod, the next life she might save. She didn't think about the explosion coming. She just worked. Lieutenant Sora made it to a shuttle with Ari. As she strapped her sister in, Ari grabbed her arm. Sora, listen. The things I saw in the network, they're real. The harvesters aren't the threat. They're just opening doors. What comes through those doors? ... We're not ready. Nobody is. Then we'll figure it out, Sora said firmly. Humanity always does. On the Indomitable's bridge, the transmission array filled the view screen. It was enormous up close, a structure that could have housed a city. The harvester station poured all its remaining power into the array, desperate to complete its mission. 30 seconds to impact, Commander Yuna reported Minho. Status on the reactor? Critical and climbing. When we hit, the explosion will be big. Real big. How big? Everything within 10 light seconds gets vaporized. That'll do. Lieutenant Heian fired one last salvo from the railguns. The projectile smashed into the array's base, weakening it further. Making you a path captain. Good work, Hyun. Tay looked at his crew. Commander Yuna, steady and brave. Lieutenant Yen, brilliant and loyal. Engineer Minho, whose voice still crackled over the communication system, working until the very end. These were the best people he had ever known. Today, we don't fight as separate species, Tay said, broadcasting on all frequencies. We fight as one galaxy united against extinction. Remember this. Build on it. And never, never let your guard down. The universe is darker and more dangerous than any of us imagined. The Indomitable struck the transmission array at full velocity. The impact was cataclysmic. Metal screamed. The array buckled and collapsed. And then Engineer Minho released the reactor safeties. The explosion tore through space like a newborn star. The harvester station vanished in an instant, its structure unable to withstand such force. The transmission array shattered into 1 billion pieces. The signal stopped. On the Draven command ship, War Marshal Cathara watched the explosion fade. Where the human vessel had been, there was now only expanding debris and cooling plasma. She lowered her head in respect. The humans fought well, she said quietly. Better than any of us. Medical Officer Gina sat in her shuttle, watching the same explosion through a viewport. She had saved hundreds of lives today, but millions had died. The weight of it pressed down on her shoulders. Beside her, Lieutenant Sora held her sister. Ari had fallen unconscious, her mind exhausted from its ordeal. But she was alive. Some had been saved. Not everyone, but some. It had to be enough. 3 months later, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. This time, humanity had a permanent seat. Ambassador Han stood before the assembled leaders, presenting the intelligence Ari had recovered from the Harvester network. The Harvesters were not the ultimate threat, Han explained. They were preparation. Something else is coming. Something that exists in dimensions beyond our understanding. The Harvesters were building doorways for them. The council chamber erupted in worried voices. High Chancellor Vexith called for order. How many Harvester stations remain? War Marshal Cathara stood. Then we must find them. Destroy them before they wake. I propose a joint military force. Human tactical skills combined with our resources and technology, other species agreed. The alliance forged in battle became permanent. Humanity was no longer the feared newcomer. They were partners, equals proven in fire. Construction began on the Indomitable II. This time, the ship included docking ports for alien craft, command interfaces for multiple species, and technologies shared by all galactic powers. It would be bigger, stronger, and crewed by the best officers the galaxy could provide. The memorial to the original Indomitable was built in the Necro's void, visible from orbit. The names of all 147 crew members who stayed behind were inscribed on a monument that would stand for millennia at the dedication ceremony. Officer Nari stood among the survivors. She had made it out at the last second, her shuttle escaping the explosion by mere seconds. She saluted the monument, tears streaming down her face. "We came back for you," she whispered. "Every single colonist we could reach. We freed them." "You didn't die for nothing," Lieutenant Sora attended with Ari, who was slowly recovering. The doctors said her mind would never be completely normal again. She had seen too much, understood too much, but she was using that knowledge to train new crews, teaching them to recognize and fight harvester technology.